Well, Razorback fans, are retreads good or bad when it comes to coaches, head coaches, and assistants? Well, let's talk about it on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors, the #1 Razorback podcast in all the land. As we have a lot of things to get to today, we'll talk a little Razorback, all SEC teams when it comes to the football side of things, as well as this insane coaching carousel that continues on. But I want to say thank you to everybody for their patience. As you can tell, my new digs, this is not really completed or anything like that. It's just been hellacious trying to move, doing it solo here the past couple of days. And so I was unable to do a podcast yesterday. But hopefully, slowly but surely, my setup here, my backdrop will get a little bit more fun than just sitting here with looking at a light switch and part of my desk. So either way, appreciate your patience. I'm starting to get all settled in. Gonna miss the old place, but this new place is going to suit me just fine. But a lot of things, man, a lot of things to get into. And it's amazing how we continue on talking about football side and just waiting on coaches to finally get assembled, at least officially. And it seems like slowly and surely we're getting to that point. We've talked about a lot of the names that have been mentioned here recently. And listen, they're solid names. No reason to get upset by them or fired up about them, even though I know some people are. However, this was something that actually happened yesterday, and it was while I was moving, so I didn't really get a chance to react to it in the moment as much. But as we know, Ron Roberts has been reported as being hired as the defensive coordinator for Arkansas. We know his connections to Florida and everything. And he's bringing on a new secondary coach, Deron Wilson. Yeah, you probably remember that name. Because when I saw it, I was like, wait. Why do I know that name? Yes, he is the former secondary coach who was here under Sam Pittman. Now, he was the last 2 seasons, he was the defensive backs coach for Florida. So obviously it makes sense with Ron Roberts coming along. But it's just funny to see him make his return. So we know that Sam Pittman and Billy Napier both relieved of their duties. And Silverfield's like having, he talked about even saying that he liked having someone familiar with the program to be able to come in. Well, I'd say that Deron Wilson fits that credential. And he was actually in 2023, when, this is according to On3 when he was credited for turning Arkansas secondary around. That year, Razorbacks ranked 4th in SEC passing yards allowed per game with 202.8 yards. That was their best mark and better than a decade. They had 12 interceptions in 2023 and was 3rd in the conference. Now, a lot of you are probably sitting there being like, wait a minute, hold on a second. Now, you're saying that we were 4th in something? You're saying that we were really good in something? On defense? Under Sam Pittman? No. That doesn't make any sense. That didn't happen. There's no way that happened. No, it did. But the problem was that in 2023, it didn't matter because your defense was such a weird conundrum where the offense was so bad that your defense, even though that they were better than maybe what you remember, there was just no connection made there. You think about the game that we don't want to talk about, but think about that Mississippi State game when you lost 7-3 at home. Hey, your defense did a really good job. I remember you held Ole Miss to one of their lowest point totals of the season at 27. I remember that we had a lot of those games that were close, like Alabama. I think you only ended up losing by 3, 24-21. So the point is, there were a lot of occasions where things like this happened, and you were trying to make sense out of it, but the team was actually fairly good, at least in the secondary at that part. So why get rid of them? What happened? Well, Florida came calling. And I remember even thinking back when Deron Wilson left to go to Florida, I was like, man, that's kind of stinks. And then you kind of look at this past year for Arkansas, where they ranked 102nd nationally in passing defense, 13th in the SEC. They were 104th in interceptions, only 6. Oof. They were 15th in the conference in there. But Wilson is coming over from Florida that allowed 222.9 passing yards a game and had 10 interceptions on the season. So to say it's going to be an improvement is great. And honestly, when I heard the news about Deron Wilson coming back, I was like, all right, really solid, because at least we know we've seen this guy before. We've seen him successful at Arkansas, and putting these things together, it just makes a lot of sense for this to come the way that it is. But it really begs the question, which I had to be careful about the way the word looks up there on the graphic. But retreads is something that gets thrown around a lot when it comes to coaches. Sometimes it's about the coaches that are mentioned on head coaching sides or coordinators or whatever it is. And here at Arkansas, and especially on the football side of things, we've had our fair share of retreads that we've seen. Most notably, more recently, Bobby Petrino coming back, and here he is as the head coach. We've seen that happen. We've seen Dan Enos come back, when he was under Pittman, under Bielema the first time, and then under Pittman the next time. We've seen that. We've seen players even come back in that regard. But it's amazing how, when you look at the retreads, and this can go for any program, not just for Arkansas, but when you look at the retreads, it seems to have a very vitriol response by some to no matter who it is, no matter what the situation is, it's bad. It's a bad deal. It's a bad thing whenever this is going to happen. And I don't buy into that. Because my thing is if a coach can coach, they can coach. It doesn't matter if they've been here before or not. Some people almost look at it as some sort of insult because, Deron Wilson, for instance, this was a guy that was here as a secondary coach 2 years ago. Then he goes to Florida, and Florida fired their coach, and he's coming back as a secondary coach. He hasn't moved up at all. He hasn't done anything differently. So why would we be excited about that? But I think you have to put things into perspective of where you're at. I mean, we know that Arkansas's defense was so bad, and it just gets so frustrating because it feels like each and every year there's always some frustrations that bubble up from, wondering why it's so bad or what's the reasoning for it being so bad. And then the times when it's not so bad, you have the offense be terrible. So it kind of gets overlapped by it. It's just frustrating. I mean, that's the plainest way to simply put it. It's a frustrating thing. And I think that when some fans see, coaches returning, they immediately have just a bad taste in their mouth about it. And I don't think this is going to be the case here for Deron Wilson. I know that he's just a secondary coach. There's a lot more to it on the defense than, just be him walking in and having the best secondary ever. You have to have a solid coach at the defense coordinator position, which I think Ron Roberts is. You have to have the players. That always helps whenever you have the players to go along with it. But I don't see this as any sort of bad deal. I don't see it as any sort of insult that they are bringing Deron Wilson back. But I think also what people are saying about the coaching staff, not only here, but also of the other ones that have been assembled, whether it's on the offensive side or the defensive side, is they keep referring back to when Ryan Silverfield said, we're going to have a staff. I think is how he put it. We're going to have a coaching staff that's going to blow your mind. And he's like, the media and the fans, it's going to be a staff that blows your mind. And I remember hearing that, and I didn't think anything of it because I just look at it as coaches saying things. Coaches just say things. They say things that they believe. They say things that they get excited about. But, if they're a little bit exaggerating when it comes to that level of excitement and everything that they have to go along with it, I don't see it as some sort of bad thing or some sort of knock against him. But then when you add into the mix of Hunter Yurachek coming out, and when he was asked about, hey, how can you prove that the funding is going to be better? He's like, hey, just check out our coaching staff and our transfer portal and all that. That's going to be the proof. It's like, okay. So has this coaching staff and the one that's been assembled blown my mind? Has it just absolutely just made me crap my pants and just sit there and be like, man, what a time to be alive with this. This is insanity. I can't believe this was put together. No, but I do think it's a solid staff. It's got plenty of SEC experience. I think there's some familiarity with Silverfield and the offense that he had over at Memphis. I think that you have people that are respected in the industry of coaches that are going to be coming along, and we'll see how it goes. Now, let me throw it to you like this, because I know there's probably some people out there that are watching this that are so mad because they're like, this is not good. This is not what we wanted. This is not how it needs to be. We expected something better than this. And I get it. I totally get it. But let me just throw something at you real quick. Let me just throw this at you and get your thoughts on it, if you don't mind. Imagine that you have this coaching staff and you're just kind of meh about it. But you throw in some high-level transfers from the portal. It's going to change your mind about how the coaching staff is. It just is. It's like, that's how it's going to be. It's going to change your mind. You're going to feel suddenly a lot like, oh, well, I always thought this staff was pretty good, actually. Not too bad. I actually like this staff. I've always felt good about this staff. This staff's got it going on. I mean, that's just how it's going to be. And so I understand you wanting to have a rush to judgment when it comes to the staff being assembled, and you should. I mean, it is what it is. Like, you got to take your lumps with it, and you got to take your criticisms with it, but you also got to look at it through the lens of what's realistic and what's not. But all I'm saying is that if you're not that impressed with the coaching staff, or at least not having your mind blown from this coaching staff, give it a second and let's see what type of portal they bring in. Because if they bring in an incredible portal, it's just going to take, been on the back burner. It's just going to take a step back from where you don't really care about how the staff assembled and how it looked or anything, because you're like, well, we got great players. So as long as we got great players, they're going to make a lot of coaching staffs look really good. So let's go ahead and wait until the whole big picture comes into play. Let's go ahead and wait and see how this all plays out when it comes to these particular coaches at these particular junctions and these particular times. When it comes to the players that they're able to bring in, that's what's really going to be the difference here. It's really going to be the difference. But again, I'm glad Deron Wilson's back. I always liked him. I think he's a great addition. And I think the connections there with the Florida former Florida defensive coordinator, now Arkansas defensive coordinator Ron Roberts, it all makes sense. We are going to get into some other things too when it comes to the coaching carousel, as well as actually, let's get into those all SEC selections, because yes, Arkansas did have some of those. So stay with us here on Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, Razorback fans, I'm here to tell you about our friends over at Aura. We know that Aura frames are where it's all about, because the holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, that's where you get Aura frames, because it's the gift that delivers every time, not just in something you wrap, but it's also a way to share a lot of memories. Because Aura isn't just about your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it. So when they plug in, the memories will already be there. No apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. Grandparents, parents, newlyweds, anyone that loves photos, these are just the type of things that you would make, you'd be the favorite. You'd be the favorite grandkid if you were able to get a gift like this for them. Endless uploads and pictures and 30-second videos that you can just have. And so it also adds a personalized message right inside the frame so that the gift feels thoughtful every single time it's opened up. So for a limited time, you can save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com. That's auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named number 1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's AURA frames.com, promo code COLLEGE. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast. So order yours now and get it in time for the holidays. Show support by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, so moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Do we really care all that much about all SEC honors? Well, I do. And one of the reasons I do is because I have the blessing to go to SEC football media days each and every year. And part of that is I get to fill out the preseason list, the preseason all SEC players. Now, no one's going to give me credit if I'm ever right, and it doesn't matter. That's okay. And most people think the media is just a crock of crap anyways when it comes to their selections and order of finish and everything. But I always find it really fascinating to see how it plays out and to see how many of the Razorbacks I get. Like, I could care less about all the other players in the SEC. But as far as Razorbacks go, how many of them did I get right? And I'm going to be honest, only got one. Fernando Carmona. It was the one that I did get, but also Mike Washington and Quincy Rhodes. All three of these guys were all SEC honors, and all of them on the second team. So you had redshirt senior Fernando Carmona, Quincy Rhodes, who's a junior, who's coming back next year, which is big, and then senior running back Mike Washington. So Carmona is one of those guys that I think had a lot of expectation coming into this season, and I would say he lived up to it. I don't think that Anybody that was expecting him just to walk in and be this electric player that's going to make the huge difference just by himself on the offensive line, it's like there's only so much you could say about somebody like that. Like there's very few players that can be able to do that. But he was incredible. He was incredible. He is actually the first Razorback offensive lineman to earn all SEC honors in consecutive years since Frank Ragnow, which I'd say is a pretty good thing. So even if you were somebody's like, Carmona, blah, it's like, well, hey, don't hate on the kid because he's done something that not many people have. And obviously the SEC and the people that put these honors together thought highly enough of him to not only do it last year, but to also have it this year too. Started in all 25 games on the offensive line in his 2 seasons as a Razorback. And he had a collegiate career of a 49-game start streak dating back to his redshirt freshman season at San Jose State. That's incredible. I don't care who you are, especially in this day and age when it comes to football and offensive line. And when you get banged up or you get hurt, to start 49 straight games and then to come into Arkansas in the SEC and start in 2 years all 25 games. That alone is incredible. That alone is just showing the longevity. And I think that that's going to be something that stands out when a lot of these pro scouts are looking at him. They're going to be like, hey, this guy, he's built to last. He's got the longevity, and that's really a big time thing. So shout out to him. But Quincy Rhodes was also, of course, one of the guys that was in the mix for being all SEC. And I'm not saying that he came out of nowhere, but I remember through the season, and it didn't go well, as we all know, but I remember just going through the season and then kind of picking up of like, the defense is bad and all that. I saw the clubhouse leaders or the conference leaders and all these stats. I'm like, oh yeah, Taylon Green's number 3 in passing, and Mike Washington's this, and Omega Blake's that. And it's, wait, Quincy Rhodes is 2nd in sacks. I beg your pardon. Like, it didn't really feel like he was he? Until like about midway point of the year, you're like, yeah, this guy's actually really good. Statistically speaking, too. He's actually having a great year. He had 44 tackles, team leading 15.5 tackles for loss, 8 sacks, 6 quarterback hurries, and a forced fumble. His 15.5 tackles for loss were the most by an Arkansas defender since Trey Flowers back in 2015, which I think they meant 2014 because Trey Flowers didn't play in 2015. But that's incredible. And I think that's really good company to be in. He's also the first Hog to register double-digit tackles in a season since Landon Jackson did in 2023, and was the first Razorback to record 3 multi-sack games in a season since Trey Williams of 2021. You guys remember him? I feel like all 3 of those games that he got, or 3 multi-sack games were like 3 out of the first 4 games. So, but yeah, it just really shows how great he was, and that's why it's so huge to get him back. So huge to get him back next season. So I love that fact. I love the fact that he did that. I love the fact that he got recognized for it. And I love the fact that people are giving him his flowers on it too. But finally, Mike Washington. Man, I really wish Mike Washington would come back this year. And I'll admit, we all kept hearing about Mike Washington all fall camp. Even in spring ball, but really in fall camp. And it got to the point where it's not that I wasn't believing. It was just one of those deals to where I was like, okay, shut up. I get tired of hearing about this guy. You keep talking about, he's like, oh, he's doing this. He's so great. He's so that. He's so that. I'm like, okay, so you're hyping him up because I feel like we've heard this before. I feel like we've heard about this standout in fall camp, standout in practice, and oh, how good he is, how great he is, how awesome he is. Man, you guys don't even know how incredible. And then he just doesn't amount to anything. Well, luckily for all of us, Mike Washington did. He amounted to a lot. He rushed for 1,000 yards. And he's the first 1,000-yard rusher since Rocket Sanders did in 2022. And it was just so crazy for him to kind of go through what he did and be on the team that was as bad as they were and just struggle the way that they did. But he had 167 rushing attempts, 8 touchdowns. And I forgot these from Utica, New York. Like just random. But he had 5 100-yard rushing games. And I mean, this was another thing too. You always see these stats. But he also became the first Razorback to reach 100-plus rushing yards in back-to-back games against an SEC opponent since Alex Collins did in 2015. So how about that? So anyways, I just wanted to give those guys the flowers. I know that the season didn't go well. I know it wasn't fun for a lot of us. But, at least there was some bright spots individually for some of these guys. Obviously, Mike Washington and Carmona going to move on with their NFL career, and hopefully they have a great, long pro career. But man, oh man, it's so good to get Quincy Rhodes back because that's a great way to start building your defense back with having a guy like that. The coaching carousel, luckily Arkansas is not involved, but man, this is an insane thing. I want to talk about it coming up next on Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, Razorback fans, I'm here to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel because we know NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. And that's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. And with FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, when a receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips over after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump right into the moment. You got live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly. And a lot of you may be checking out the Arkansas Texas Tech basketball game this weekend. Well, hey, listen, it's a close one, but Texas Tech's favored by 1.5 in this one. So if you're feeling like the Hogs, I'd go that direction. But you're right in the middle of the action all season long. So visit FanDuel.com and place all your bets, like your NFL live bets or your college basketball bets, all season long. It's FanDuel. The game moves fast, and so can you. All right, so final segment here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I know that Arkansas went through a coaching search, and it's over with, and it's done. You got Ryan Silverfield moving on. But, it was almost a lost in translation thing of how many schools went through coaching changes. We talked about LSU, talked about Florida, talked about Auburn, Virginia Tech, Penn State, UCLA, just to name a few of the madness. Ole Miss technically went through one, but theirs was pretty short-lived since they just hired, their interim coach and then moved up from there. But the point is like it was just madness. It was absolute chaos. So the last thing I thought would be yesterday that there would be another major college football job opening up, and lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. You had Michigan. Michigan opened up. Sharon Moore fired for cause at Michigan. It was reported, and again at the time of the recording of this podcast, reported that he had an inappropriate relationship with a staffer, and then he was even detained, like by police. So it was like, okay, so again, there's probably more that's going to come out. Maybe by the time you're listening to this, something has come out, but I'm just recording this and reacting in real time, which is an awful thing. But talk about a crazy situation in that regard, but also just adding to the madness of the coaching carousel here in college football. Michigan might be one of the biggest, baddest jobs around. As far as the Big Ten goes, I think it's Ohio State and Michigan, right there. And then, Michigan to me is also a top 10 job easily in college football. And now they're looking for a coach. After all this settling, the domino effect and everything, now they're the ones that have to go and look for a coach as well. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what their route's going to be. I know that that one guy, of course, his name just escaped me, the guy that is always a funny looking dude that's out there. He's going to be the interim coach for the time being. So, who knows, maybe he gets the gig, but it's just crazy out there, man. It's crazy. And a lot of people are trying to say like, that's just horrible because they don't give coaches time and everything, which I know the Sharon Moore situation is a little bit different. But to me, I think it's just more of a changing of the guard of, hey, we're no longer going to have these coaches that aren't all in and up to date and understanding of the situations when it comes to NIL, when it comes to transfer portal, when it comes to appealing to the masses that way. We got to get people who are younger, energized, and aggressive instead of just being stuck in their own ways. And I think this is what's going to work out. I think it's how it's going to play out, and I think it's going to be great. So anyways, just one of those crazy things, man. Just one of those crazy things that happened. And I guess we'll see how it all plays out, but adding it to the mix of the madness that is the coaching carousel here in college football. Appreciate each and every one of you listening in and watching into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at John Nabors Show for any questions, comments, concerns you may have. Keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you then.